Okay, everybody, we are recording this session with the express purpose of posting it online. Let that guide your thoughts, words, and deeds this afternoon. If you don't wish to be seen, please turn off your camera. If you don't wish to be heard, please don't speak into your microphone, but all are welcome. And of course, we hope that you will have lots of great questions. For our special guest, Mikey Shaffer, Regional Sales Manager of Listen Technologies. Mikey's been involved in the assistive listening space, assistive technology space for the past 10 years. What began as a fierce advocacy for inclusion through technology led Mikey to join Listen Technologies, leading manufacturer of assistive listening systems. At Listen Technologies, Mikey blends her sales and marketing experience with her personal passion for inclusion and ensuring equal access through assistive listening. When she's not working, you'll find her adventuring outdoors, hiking, camping, and exploring the mountains, coastlines, and forests of California. And doesn't that sound terrific right now on a gray Friday afternoon in Minnesota? We've got people joining us from all around the country, including Mikey. The floor is yours. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me share my screen really quick and get set up here, and we will dive right in. Hopefully you can see our logo on the screen. If I did it right. Okay. So it's my understanding that this is, clearly not a sales opportunity, and so I kind of built a deck that's manufacturer agnostic. Wasn't that hard to do because I teach the ADA courses that are manufacturer agnostic for Avixa. But if you have specific questions that I did not include, that maybe, product details, feel free if you need to ask them. I'm happy to answer them. It's a small enough group. If you want to chime in as I go, that's fine with me, or we can do questions at the end. But I thought we could start a little bit with assistive listening as a concept, what it is, where is it required by law, and then talk about how that we use these technologies to accomplish that ADA compliance, but then also how we deliver on top of that. We all want to meet the letter of the law, but we want to deliver an inclusive experience, which is at the heart of the law, right? So that matters more than just checking boxes. At least it does to me, and it certainly does to those who rely on these technologies to, specifically in your case, to get the education that they are paying for and deserve. And so a lot of these products can be used to serve other demographics or provide an even more inclusive experience above and beyond just doing what the ADA tells us to do. So, there are sometimes questions, what is assistive listening? Isn't it just a hearing aid or, a personal amplifier? And it is not. Assistive listening is a way to take audio from one source and deliver it out to many and have that be a direct connection. Either that audio is delivered personally to that end user, whether it's being delivered via headphones or whether that assistive listening system is connecting directly to their hearing aids or perhaps their cochlear implant. All of those are just fine, and they are all perfectly acceptable, and no one hard of hearing person, it's not set it and forget it, right? They don't all have or benefit from hearing aids. They don't all have or benefit from a cochlear implant. Some people are not there yet, but they would benefit from wearing a headset and having that audio delivered right to their ears. So in a nutshell, it is a wireless system, and it's built to take an audio source, could be any audio source, and deliver that straight to end user and cut out the middleman, cut out all of that reverberation and reflective noise and rustling of papers. And that's part of the reason why hearing aids are not enough. In fact, hearing aids make the problem worse in public spaces because of things like reverberation, because it is just a mic amplifying noise, and they're getting better and they're getting more directional. And you can even open your phone generally, and there's an app to say, I'm at a restaurant, so we're going to turn off the far noise and only focus on this conversation. But again, somebody drops a cup or a plate and it's going to amplify all of that. And so it's very distracting in any public environment, and classrooms are no different. So all assistive listening systems they work in the same manner. You've got an audio source, you've got some component that's going to transmit that, and then you need a way to receive that audio. So regardless of the technology, it's going to be basically these 3 steps. So the law does support assistive listening under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And basically, you know, we're all familiar with it. We know about handicapped bathrooms. We know about handicapped doorways. All of those things are enforced under building code, and we see them, we understand them, we see a parking spot and we know what that means and why it's there. But assistive listening goes under the radar. Mostly it gets ignored and unnoticed because hearing loss is really, it's considered the silent disability. We don't see the struggle someone has, and they're certainly not usually going to speak up about it. And so it's important, it's a really important part of the law, even if it does get overlooked. And so what it says in a nutshell is that in each assembly area where audible communication is integral to the use of the space, assistive listening shall be provided. What does that mean? It means in any public environment, education included, if they are using amplified audio to convey the information that the person came to hear, then they need to provide assistive listening. Amplified audio could be, you know, an in-room speaker system, but it could also be projector audio, TV audio, laptop audio. If the teacher is conveying or the school is conveying information that is imperative to the student and the reason why they are there, then they need to provide assistive listening in public spaces. And that can be done in a variety of different ways. And, you know, you get a lot of questions. Well, what about little meeting rooms or breakout spaces? Really, the letter of the law is saying, are you amplifying audio? If so, it's going to be difficult to hear. So that's really the baseline. It's enforced by the Department of Justice. Now they don't have roaming teams coming to check your work. It would be reported by an end user who didn't feel accommodated if they asked for the accommodation. Oftentimes for students, that's taken care of, you know, at enrollment, right? They've got somebody in charge of inclusivity and accessibility, and they're aware of that. It might be written into part of their program. But so schools dice that up a lot of different ways on how they accomplish this. But generally, if you are in violation, it's going to be self-reported by an end user. Now, there are occasions. I have a higher ed campus in Texas who literally had to outfit their entire campus this year. That's not normally how it goes, but it was a huge investment for them. And that's because they taught classes for the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice came in and did a sweep, right? If you're going to get funding from us, then, and so it wasn't just us, it was, you know, all of their bathrooms and all of their parking spots. And so it was a huge investment for them. What I will say is, like I said, the fine is high. It starts at 55,000. The next violation is 110,000 on top of that. However, what they're really going for is accessibility. So in my experience, like with the college that I worked with this summer, they had time to work it out. The preference from the Department of Justice is that you create the accommodations, not that you spend money paying their fines. So they usually generally start to create a plan, a long-term plan for you to come within compliance. So they say assembly area, and then they go on to kind of break that down. This is a list that is not all inclusive, including but not limited to everything you see here. So classrooms and lecture halls definitely are specifically called out. And then you can see most campuses also have arenas and stadiums and performing arts spaces. All those places would definitely fall under it. Okay, so you can offer assistive listening and have it not meet compliance. And honestly, something is better than nothing. And I'm thrilled if you have something, right? But to make an app to the letter of the law compliance system, you're going to have 4 components. And one is obviously your transmitter, and that you're going to make that decision based on need and the environment. And we'll talk about that. You're going to have to provide receivers. Nothing will get around the receiver requirement, regardless of technology. The expectation is not that someone should bring their own receiver to an environment, even though a lot of times they're going to prefer to. We do have to provide receivers, and that number is going to be based on the seating capacity of the facility. A certain percentage of those receivers are going to require neck loops. What a neck loop is, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically it is like a mini induction loop that is personal to the user. Rather than installing that in the floor or in the ceiling, it's something they wear around their own neck. And what that does is it takes the receiver audio and delivers it straight to a telecoil, hearing aid, or cochlear implant. Not all cochlear implants or hearing aids have telecoils. It's something that they would need to specifically purchase when they purchase their hearing aids and have activated by their audiologist. Across the world, it's very, very common. Here in North America, it's not as common, and it's becoming increasingly less common to have a T-coil and installed hearing loops in facilities. Mostly that's because they take up a little bit of real estate in that hearing aid, real estate that rechargeable batteries can go in, Bluetooth capability can go in. And so in North America, that's a struggle. We're all beholden to what hearing aid manufacturers are doing, and it's kind of slowing down there, but it is still part of ADA compliance. The ADA has only been updated one time since 1991. They don't go in and update based on trends. So I expect it to be there for quite a while. And for people who rely on it, it is awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the final component is signage. You always have to advertise that you have it available. We've all seen the ear. It's the international symbol for assistive listening, no different than marking a parking spot or a handicapped bathroom. So I mentioned receivers and neck loops are based on seating capacity. You don't need to memorize this chart. It's a lot. Just know that basically even rooms that under 50 seat, it used to be prior to 2012, the ADA said rooms under 50 didn't need to meet compliance. They have done away with that. That went into effect in 2013. So all rooms that meet the other requirements do require assistive listening, whether or not they are 50 seats or less, whether or not that is fixed seating, that is irrelevant now. If they have amplified audio, then they need to provide assistive listening. The bare minimum for a room up to 50 is going to be 2 receivers and 2 neck loops. And then from there, it just kind of is a calculation that gets smaller and smaller when the capacity gets bigger. Do we have a question? Thought I heard a question. Nope. Okay. You don't need to memorize this. We have calculators on our websites. Joe can help you with that, or these calculators are available online, accessibility calculators. You would just go in, and in your case, you're going to use the United States calculator. There are some states that do it a little differently. California is one of them, and so they have separate calculators, but these are available to you, or you can reach out and I can help you calculate it. But there's also an app. You could download an app if you want to do this more often. Okay, so there are 4 basic technologies that are accepted for use to meet ADA compliance. The most common are going to be your radio frequency, RF, or sometimes called FM, and infrared. Infrared is really prolific on campuses. Those are pretty much tried and true. They've always been around. They always will be around. And then we have hearing loop, which we already sort of discussed in reference to the neck loops, but this would be an actually installed hearing loop within the facility. And once you step into that loop, if you have a T-coil hearing aid, you'll be able to connect automatically. And then Wi-Fi, this is the new darling. It's what most campuses are interested in, and we're going to talk a little bit more detail about that. Now, ADA does not specifically reference Wi-Fi because this was not a technology that existed at their last update, but what they do is they leave a backdoor. If new technology comes in onto the market that is providing the same or better experience and meets all the other check marks that they set forth, then it is a viable solution and is acceptable under the ADA. Okay. So jumping right into the technology, the most common you're going to see in classrooms is infrared. There's a few reasons for this. Did I skip a slide? Nope. Okay. Didn't know if I was trigger happy. There's a few reasons for this. One, it is light-based. The way it works is you have your audio source and you're going to have a transmitter. The additional component for IR is a radiator, a light radiator. So it's just sending out that audio signal over infrared light, and it's being picked up by receivers. In the early years of infrared, it got a really bad rap for the same reason our TV remotes do. It only picked up the signal sometimes or would experience cutouts. I can't speak for others, but I can say that this technology has improved so greatly that hard of hearing folks refer to infrared oftentimes as our infrared as it sounds just like RF. And that's because we have some technology that has been greatly improved. And so in your case, it's the easiest thing for students to use, and it's going to be one of the easiest things for your teams to manage. Because it is light dependent, it is secure to the room. Now, in most college campuses, that's not going to matter, right? It's not like this is, state secrets we're talking about. But what that does is, because the audio is secure to the room, it makes it so that a student can have one receiver and move from room to room to room, and they never have to change the channel. They never have to fiddle with a frequency. It's going to pick up whatever audio signal is in that room, and it's going to drop it when they leave the room. So because of that, it's really easy for the student, and you can give them a receiver for the entire semester or year if you'd like. And it makes it very easy for divisible spaces, because it's just going to pick up whatever signal is stronger if there's two signals in that room. So just super flexible. These come in two different systems generally. One is a combo system. So your transmitter, the one you see there on the bottom, it's just an example I threw in from our lineup, but it's a transmitter and radiator combo. So in small to medium spaces, that's all you need. You're going to take your audio, feed it straight to this one unit. Maybe if it's an odd space, you might throw an extra radiator around, but that's all you need. So that could be, portable or installed. And then the top system is pretty common. It's a component system. That transmitter would sit in the rack and it would feed radiators throughout the space, and those would cover a huge area. So more like a performing arts space. Classrooms are more common to have the smaller combination systems. So again, secure, you can have one receiver and take it throughout all the rooms and pick up that signal. I won't go too deep into there, but know that it's going to be very, very common in classroom spaces. It's going to be very common in performing arts spaces. Where you're not going to find it is in outdoor spaces. Obviously, that's going to dilute the light. And you can have in your divisible spaces, you can have up to 4 channels at a time on IR, and an IR receiver can generally pick up 4 channels at a time at most. So if you're running multiple languages, anything above 4, you're probably not going to use infrared at that point. Okay, radio frequency. This one is, common. It is no different than a car radio. You're taking an audio source, running it through a transmitter, you're picking the right antenna for how far you want to throw that signal, and you're using a radio frequency receiver to pick up that signal. So it is not secure. It can support multi-channels. Eventually they're going to overlap. So generally it's not really used in classrooms, although people do it because they're thinking, what are the chances these will all be turned on at the same time? Not that high, maybe, I don't know. It depends on your environment, but you're limited by how many frequencies are available and how many channels your receiver can pick up before they start to overlap, right? There's things we can go do to kind of restrict that signal, but for the most part, back-to-back classrooms, we almost always go IR and not RF. RF has more than one frequency, and these will vary by manufacturer, but 72, you can go up to 1,000 feet generally, line of sight, and that's going to throw that signal in all directions that far, depending on your antenna. So your small to medium spaces, and 216 is for outdoor use or really large spaces. So your stadiums, your arenas, that can go up to 3,000 feet. So if you're trying to outfit an entire stadium, that's going to be really your only choice because of the distance it can throw and because of the outdoor rated antennas. That's the value of 216. Oops. Okay, so on a campus space, you're going to see, you could have RF in classrooms. It's not as common, but in smaller spaces, you could definitely do that. But you would be using it in your stadiums, in your gyms, if you had, chapel or, other meeting spaces on campus where you needed to throw that signal farther, outdoor events, graduations, these are the kinds of things you'll see RF. So you will see a mix of RF and IR on the average campus. And one thing I didn't mention that is important to know is all of these technologies can be used to accommodate other groups, right? So if you were having a performance or something and there was going to be audio description, you could certainly run an extra channel for that. If you were going to provide, a translated feed, for example, that would just simply be another channel designation. All of these things, all it is, we're not really picky about the audio source, right? It could be anything, doesn't have to be assistive listening. One other component for RF that you will find is portable kits. Now, there are portable kits for IR as well, but portable RF would be something like that you would take on the go, right? So maybe it's to support your campus tours. Maybe it's to support, huddle rooms or meeting spaces. You can certainly rely on a portable assistive listening system if you had a space that's not really set up every day to accommodate students. But if you had an event in the library, for example, you could use a portable RF system and fall within compliance. Some portable RF systems, like I said, I can't speak broadly for all manufacturers, but some of them have the ability to just be integrated right into, a rolling rack, for example. So if you had an ad hoc outdoor event, it might be really useful to just take your audio out, plug it in, hand out some receivers, and now you have a way to be in compliance, outdoors. And all of these can also support interpretation. If you had, a guest, a foreign language guest on your campus, and you needed to have an interpreter come alongside them, you could definitely support it with that too. So just a few other ways to use it outside of compliance. Hearing loop, we already talked about this a little bit. Full disclosure, we don't sell hearing loops. We're out of the hearing loop business, but I can answer any questions because I'm still a fan. And for a certain component of your students who rely on a telecoil hearing aid, it might be their preference. So it's okay to, I think we should definitely talk about it. This is referring to an installed hearing loop. It's definitely a construction project. It's built into the floor, maybe in the ceiling in some older environments where they can't really tear it up. But basically it's one channel of audio. So you're really accommodating one subset of the hard of hearing with one channel of audio, which means if you don't have a telecoil hearing aid, you're going to have to still sit within the loop, but you're going to have to check out a receiver anyway. So in that sense, it's not real different than any other technology. But if you are one of those users who do have a telecoil hearing aid, it's awesome to just be able to enter into a loop space and directly connect. And all of that audio is running through your specific hearing aid programming. So it's why you might hear advocates speak of it. It's still a great solution, and it will be for a while. Generally, I see it paired with other solutions so that they can accommodate others as well, or run another channel, right? It plays well with RF or IR or even Wi-Fi. Okay. Audio over Wi-Fi is probably what a lot of people are interested in. It's kind of the talk of the town, especially in higher ed, because today's student is not really eager to call out their hearing loss. They're not super eager to check out equipment, and they all now have Bluetooth connected hearing aids, right? And so they're already carrying a receiver around in their backpack every day, and that is their own phone or tablet. So basically this is taking an audio source, and it is, rather than a transmitter, it is being run through a server. So that server is going to live somewhere on their network. In your case, it might be the student network that they, join whenever they're on campus. That's going to send that signal out over Wi-Fi to be received by either the student's phone, their smartphone, or their tablet via an app. All manufacturers kind of rely on a free app to deliver this, or alternatively, receivers, because remember, an important part of compliance is that you guys have receivers available for your students should they prefer to check one out. The latency is pretty great, but it's going to be dependent on their phone, right? All phones going to have a different codec and different connections and between the phone and Bluetooth. And so that's one thing that we cannot solve for, you cannot solve for. If they, had a burner phone, for example, then they're probably going to want to check out a receiver from you guys. But just having the receivers available per building or at the accessibility office will usually meet that need. But just know that it does not absolve you from that portion of ADA law, even though we know every student has is walking around campus with their own receiver. So once that audio reaches the phone, they can listen to it however they prefer. Probably not on speakerphone, because that would be not helpful to the rest of the class, but they can connect via Bluetooth to their hearing aid, their cochlear implant, their smartphone earbuds, their AirPods that they are already walking around with, or they can plug in a headset if that's their preference. And neck loops generally work with phones, right? Neck loops usually have a 3.5 millimeter input, and they an iPhone would have a dongle to accommodate that. But in general, neck loops are going to work really well with phones. And if a student is a T-Coil user, they likely already have a neck loop of their own that they would plug into their phone. Sorry, my PowerPoint was frozen. Okay, so audio over Wi-Fi, the one of the other advantages is that you're not really limited on channel count, depending on the size of the server you buy. For example, ours go up to 16 channel. If you needed 32 channels, you would just start stacking them. That can be done, in bulk channels, like in large channel counts. Some campuses will put them per classroom, right? And just have an individual server per 1 or 2 classrooms. How you do that is, really your preference. But at that point, you have channels available for TV audio or assistive listening or audio description. There's really, no limit. And most manufacturers, like I said, pair that with an app. I am not familiar with everyone's app. I can tell you that the Listen app also has marketing opportunities, right? You can brand it. You can put your logo, your colors. You can link out to websites, host PDFs if that's what you want to do. I'm sure you will find that probably elsewhere as well. But it just kind of takes it out of just compliance and now is like a tool that you guys can use and promote to get other information out there. One of the other beauties is with Wi-Fi, you basically have reach anywhere on campus where your Wi-Fi reaches. In most cases, that's a good thing, right? I'm going to the student union. I'm going to work out at the rec center. I want to listen to the TVs through my phone. Great. Those could just be separate channels on your Wi-Fi system. I'm in a classroom, maybe I'm in, the arena, maybe I am in an outdoor event or in a stadium. Well, your indoor events and your outdoor events, if you're using IR in your classrooms and Wi-Fi or an RF in your stadiums, you have 2 different receiver fleets to manage that look pretty similar, right? They need to be kept separate and not confused. With Wi-Fi, you're just kind of on one ecosystem across your whole campus. So either a campus will adopt it as their standard solution, or they will they're already meeting compliance maybe with RF or IR. And so they're just going to add on Wi-Fi as an added bonus for students who would like to use it either in the classroom to be discreet, or who among us can really hear in a stadium? We would all benefit from being able to just quickly pop in our earbuds and listen with our phone, regardless of our hearing status. So that's usually, it either goes 1 or 2 ways. Either that's how they're going to meet compliance, or it's just an add-on. If you're already meeting compliance with IR or RF, then it's not really imperative that you even provide Wi-Fi receivers, right? The students can use their own phones and just listen how they prefer.
Mikey, I have a question there.
Uh-huh.
So the ADA, it says you need to provide it if it's an integral part, right?
Yeah.
The actual definition ADA. Now, are TVs in a workout area?
No.
Like, I'm just asking. So this isn't
not.
law. This is just, hey, wouldn't this be nice?
That would fall into the category of an add-on, right? You're just offering a better experience because you're sick of fixing the jacks that are on the treadmills, right? So integral to the use of the space means this is part of why I am paying my tuition to be here. This is the information that I need to get my education. That does not include running on a treadmill and watching a reality show, but it does if that TV is conveying, information relevant to the course. Yes. The other thing it does not include is like emergency announcements. It is important to be able to hear emergency announcements. However, the law has a lot of other ways they make that happen. You've got signage, you've got flashing lights, you've got alarms, you've got all manner of things to indicate there is an emergency happening. So if you've just got kind of passive PA audio that's not really relevant to how the space is being used, that does not require assistive listening. But like if it's a swim meet and they're having, they're calling it over the loudspeaker, that would fall under ADA compliance. Does that make sense?
100%.
So you're saying that in a sports arena, that's just purely sports entertainment, that still would fall under?
Yeah. So if you remember back to the including but not limited to, arenas are part of that for sure. It's a public space. People are invited to be there, and the announcements are part of that experience, right? The play-by-play, the calls, all of that is part of that experience. But that's where I was saying that some things are going to fall outside of compliance. You are not required to deliver gym TV audio to your students. However, if you've already got the system in place, it's just another added on, bonus that if you want to take advantage of it, you can use it in that manner, right? Just like you have no obligation to deliver an interpreted feed, right, to an audience. But if you had that feed available, Wi-Fi is a great way to just add another channel and get it out there without having to buy a bunch of receivers. People can, if they want that service, they can download the app and they can listen through their own phone, because you're not obligated to provide receivers for an interpreted feed.
Question for, I came a little bit late, but when is there a date to which this all needs to be implemented?
No, I mean, the ADA law has been in place for a long time. I would say that there are a lot of violators out there. And like I said earlier on, you probably weren't here for this. There's no, force out there roaming that's going to check your work. It is basically relying on people reporting that they went to, the Office of Accommodation or the Accessibility Office, and they did not have receivers, or there was no system installed at all. And so that would get reported and hopefully fixed on your end before it made it to the Department of Justice. But that's how, in your state specifically, that is how that would happen. Like in California, we can't even take occupancy of our buildings without showing the inspector assistive listening. So that's more like I get a call on a Friday afternoon saying I can't take occupancy. I need you to overnight a system to me. That's different. That's done state by state. California is California, so we like to make it extra hard. But in your state, or in most states, so you're in Iowa,
Correct.
The Department of Justice would only react if you were reported to them.
So to follow up to the previous guy's question, just at our football games, basketball games, which are different arenas, and we also have chapel that's required on a weekly basis, and classrooms, all are required. Okay.
Yeah. Now, religious facilities in general in most states they don't fall under the same ADA law for assistive listening. On campus, that's where I would be a little, I'm not sure, but if you're requiring them, then it would make sense to throw RF in there. And like, you might've missed this part too. What I will say is the best way to avoid conflict or being reported is to have something. Something is better than nothing. If you have 2 receivers, wonderful. Because the chances of more than 2 people coming at any time and being upset with you for not accommodating them is pretty small. And something is better than nothing in every case. And every hard of hearing person would agree that it might not be perfect, but at least they can participate.
Well, it really comes to mind today because we had a preview day where we have seniors come and visit campus. And today was the first time ever that we've had somebody who is deaf. So I'm like, oh, this is really on our mind. It's like, if we accept them next year, we need to accommodate too. So
yeah. And if they are actually deaf, how you accommodate them is going to differ than someone who's hard of hearing, right? So captions may be more beneficial, an interpreter may be more beneficial, depending on if they have residual hearing. That might be, a better way to go. So they are very different things, but like I said, something's better than nothing. Captions are going to be better than leaving them out.
Yeah, that's what we did. We added caption to all of our videos. So
yeah.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Yeah. Okay. I guess
I have a quick question. Earlier, you were talking about how a lot of hearing aids, fewer hearing aids are being made with the telecoils. I know that recently the FDA okayed over-the-counter hearing aids. And so now you see, I think there's like an HP brand hearing aid,
Yeah.
which it's like weird. But have you been taking stock of those at all? Like what technologies are baked into those? And
Yeah, it's telecoil, likely not. I know there was a lot of advocacy around that, but the thing about a telecoil is by nature, it is not an over-the-counter solution because it has to be programmed by an audiologist, right? An audiologist or a hearing aid provider. An audiologist might be willing, a hearing aid provider, I mean, they're a for-profit entity. So if you spend $199 on hearing aids at Walgreens, likely it's not going to have what you need to have a telecoil programmed, right? So, and there's that is up in the air too. The purists are like, well, we would rather. There's a lot of involved in hearing aid technology and hearing aid programming, but I would say it falls kind of under the category of something's better than nothing, right? If that is all grandma can afford, then some relief is better than not having anything. So I think we'll see them become very prolific, those over the counter, but I don't think we'll see them with telecoil. I think that the higher end versions will have Bluetooth.
thank you.
I got a comment. So I've been putzing with this ALS stuff for 10, 15 years, just trying to get a consistent idea across campus that we need to be doing this. The fact that we need to do it in every classroom now that I think, no, based on this, is a little bit scary. And I'm trying to get our large venues to do this and be consistent so that a person can walk from place to place to place. And probably over FM, because I know it's going to be in arenas and such.
Yeah.
My question though is, are there places, are there grants available to do this kind of stuff? I mean, I got to outfit, 200 rooms, easy.
Yeah, there are, and they're going to be, specific, whether it's an accessibility grant that's specific to certain universities. I do know that the federal government at the federal level, they have some help available as well. It's something that, each campus is probably going to have to research because it's going to vary.
So that's probably done through our student accessibility people.
Yeah,
Say,
generally
hey,
through the accessibility offices, they have access to the grants.
Okay.
And yeah, for you, yeah, you fall into that category, you're doing something. So I would start with those larger areas on your campus, and then maybe just buy a couple of portable kits so that if a student for that semester comes to the accessibility office and says, I need something, they have something that student can take personally with them, right?
Right.
Like some of those portable RF solutions are very compact. They have it's that you just unplug the headset and instead take your audio out from whatever's in the room. And now you've got a portable transmitter. Maybe that student is just responsible for going to the room, plugging it in when they get there, and they have a way to do it. Like I said, something will be better than nothing until you can get there.
We've been looking at this one from, I think it's called Caliphone. It's just a little transmitter receiver repair that you put in a room and whatever.
Yeah. And the thing I would say on some of those is, so ADA law has some specific requirements to make an ADA system, right? There needs to be a certain type of headset jack. There needs to be a certain level of audio quality. So if you were worried about an inspection or something, then you're going to just want to be aware of that. But like I said,
like I said, I've been doing this for 10 to 15 years on this. And what's scary is, we're doing stuff, but I have yet, and I've got belt packs receivers at our checkout desks. I have yet to have one actually checked out in the 15 years that I've been doing this. So
and
it's like,
that happens. It's very common.
Yeah.
I would say that it's a common story for a few reasons. One is, in some venues, the requirement is it's kind of a lot, right?
Yeah.
Why?
5,000 seats need 100
receivers here. They're not going to get those checked out. So that's why I'm like, start with something. The smallest investment will be the transmitter and a few receivers. It's the high receiver counts where it starts to really add up. But also your demographic, right? I mean, most college students are not like, hey, look at me, I'd like to wear a giant unit around my neck and
Point myself out.
put myself out there. And that's why Wi-Fi is growing
So
exponentially in your demographic, because that's what's, everyone's got an earbud in already. It's
okay,
not
so
out.
let's say we've got multiple, we've all got our sports venues and we've all got large auditoriums and such. My question is, if our accessibility office knows about these devices that we can be checked out on, and every venue can work with these devices, I don't need 4,000 receivers. I need the maximum amount for the largest venue. Would that then cover all of the other ones? It's
So,
like a 5,000 seat needs like 91 receivers.
yeah,
But
right. Well, it depends. So you're going to want to consider, right? If you have IR in the classrooms and RF in the stadium, obviously those can't be shared.
yeah,
But with the way the law is written, so if you have, oftentimes they'll accept, I have this building on campus. The sum total of the rooms that should fall under the requirement is this. That's the number you put into your calculator, right? Not per room, because it's going to save you on that once you get to that higher number. Now, the law reads that's per building under the same management, but a lot of campuses, what they do is they just take the broad number, right? This is how many IR receivers we would, how many systems and how many rooms and how much capacity for the entire campus. That's the number they're using, and they're storing them at one central location, the accessibility office. Right.
Okay. So you need a transmitter per room, but the receivers,
the law is very vague in there, but that's generally the way a campus like yours would do that. Right.
Okay.
And like I said, that's the beauty of infrared, for example, is that receiver can be checked out to the student for a semester or a year at a time, and they'll never have to change the channel. As long as they're walking into classrooms, they'll have what they need. If they go to the stadium, they probably need to grab an RF receiver.
Or Wi-Fi.
Now, Wi-Fi, the latency is really great. Where I would say you probably don't want to rely on Wi-Fi as it's a standalone would be, a cinema, right? So where lip sync, I can't speak for everyone. Ours is, with an iPhone, you're around 40, 50 milliseconds. It's really pretty great. And for a classroom, great. But if you're like, no, the experience is to have it's just not going to deliver the same exact experience like for a movie or something, right? There might be a little bit of lip sync there. And like I said, you can't control for their phone. And then if they're going to use their phone and connect to the Bluetooth, right? Most hearing aid users are aware that that's going to introduce some latency. And believe me, the biggest single driver and sponsor of Bluetooth technology moving forward is hearing aid providers, because it's a big problem, right? To have that many different codecs and all the phones connecting at different, I have a retirement center, so they've got like 30 different sets of hearing aids in this room and 30 different types of phones, and they're all trying to connect to Bluetooth and watch a TV show that is also blaring for everybody else that don't have hearing aids. And it was it was not the right solution for that environment yet. There are major improvements coming there. So I would say if something like that is a do or die lip sync, I probably wouldn't go Wi-Fi, and that's just me, but certainly people do. We have theaters who use it all the time.
Mikey, at 24 frames per second, one frame of a movie is about 40 milliseconds. So is that figure, that range, kind of 40 to 50 millisecond, is that a reasonable ballpark to be thinking about in terms of latency over Wi-Fi? Again, I understand it's processor and codec dependent.
Yeah, it's acceptable to meet ADA compliance, for, live audio in a room. Like I said, if you were a, major cinephile and you're like really into movies, I would say that's not acceptable. And it's, obviously your distance in a live scenario, your distance from the speaker, how much residual hearing you have, and if you're getting conflict, those are all things that are, are going to be up to the user. And but I can only, quote latency for our system specifically, and I'm trying to purposely be vague, but we know what to quote for our listen built receivers, and we know what iPhones and your average Android should expect given the proper network. What we don't know is what that delay will be between their phone and their Bluetooth. We can't solve for that.
Yep.
But it's acceptable for hearing assistive listening.
Great. And then is Bluetooth officially approved technology? I wasn't perfectly clear on that. And how do we know what approved technology?
So audio over Wi-Fi systems are not Bluetooth.
Right.
We're just delivering it over Wi-Fi to a phone. How they connect beyond that is that's not something for the ADA to speak to. Now, in the future, will we likely live in a world where Bluetooth is not one-to-one, it's one-to-many, and now everyone can connect via Bluetooth? Probably, and at some point the ADA is going to have to address that. But right now, what we're actually talking about is not whether Bluetooth is compliant, but whether Wi-Fi is compliant.
Right.
Because really what the ADA asks for is a way to transmit the audio and a way to receive it. And it's not being received at the end by Bluetooth, it's being received at the end by a phone or a receiver and then delivered via Bluetooth. That part the ADA is not as picky on. As long as you have neck loops, how they get that audio straight to their ear is really their preference. They do have strict parameters on what that receiver should accomplish and what features it needs to have and what the transmitter needs to be able to do.
So if we were to just put out a Bluetooth transmitter and feed either a hearing impaired track or a visual description track to it and just let people associate with it, that wouldn't work, right? That's not sufficient, is it?
No, because if you're trying to meet the letter of the law, then no, you would have to have, they are not up to date, right? Receivers
Sure, yeah.
are still part of it. Like I said, if they're going to update it once every 20 years, they're for sure going to be behind. That's why it's great when states get involved. I actually don't mind that California is so strict because they update theirs every 3 years. So my best chance of getting a reasonable accommodation written in there for places like stadiums that don't need 1,000 receivers, it's going to be at the state level.
Yeah.
But we, contrary to popular belief, hearing aid manufacturers don't really get a say on the ADA law and how it's written. People think we do, but we don't.
And then Walter from University of Arizona has a question in chat. Is there any activity on updating the laws to count bring your own device in the count of needed devices?
No, I do not think that there is movement on there yet. What I can say from my work in advocacy, I came to listen from Loop advocacy before, and we don't even sell Loop anymore, but I've worked hand in hand with advocates and at the national level and at the group level. And I can say that the national level, they have priorities. And I think once Wi-Fi is more prolific, it will be a priority for them to advocate. Chances of an advocating for less compliance are not great, but with Wi-Fi, I think that is a big game changer, right? Everyone has a receiver in their pocket. I believe that it will surpass Loop as being a preference. But on the grassroots level, local level, people are like, I just want whatever's going to be in the most spaces, right? Loop is a tough sell. It's very expensive. It's a lot of work. It's a construction project and there's a lot of failure points. And you also have to be certified to be able to handle it. And someone comes in and cuts the rug and now your Loop is gone. And so even though it's an awesome technology and has been around a long time, it's not the easiest way to get compliance on every campus. It's a huge ask. Whereas Wi-Fi is, if you're not doing, if you're only just putting in a server, it's a very, very small investment. And that I can get that in, every performance space in this nation faster than I could ever get 2 Loops installed, right? So that's the thing. As much as I love Loop and will never speak out against it, I'm most interested in accommodating the most amount of people, right? And how can we do that? We can do that by, pushing other solutions that are a little bit easier on your budget and a little bit easier on your installers and accommodate more people.
I have a question related to Nick's comment. He said multicast in our network has been a sticking point for a networking team. This might be a good opportunity to dust off the conversation to see if it's become possible. And my question is, what should I be asking my network people if I want to provide this Wi-Fi solution in confidence? Because
Yeah, so
that sometimes is a tough conversation.
we have a specific networking guide. So just to have like the baseline, it would be specific to our equipment. I'm happy to share it as a follow-up. What I will say is what we are looking for is, we're looking for enterprise level networks, right? I do have people, end users that use it on their home network, but that's just them, not a whole student body. Yes, we use multicast and unicast. So the reason why we can have us personally, I can speak to us, we have a very high user count. We can handle 1,000 users per server. If you need 2,000 people streaming at the same time, you would just simply use 2 servers, right? That's really, really high in our industry. And but we are sending, the server is sending it out in multicast so that phones can find it. So it's discoverable. And then once it makes that connection, it's unicast. And that's how we can accomplish that. If your networking team has big beef with multicast, you can avoid that, right? You got your accessibility office would just, in our case, what's the address that they need to join? Just send them straight to the network and you don't have to worry about it being discoverable. We can accomplish that in a few ways, right? You can give them that address, or you can use, we rely on QR codes all the time, right? And only the students who need it would have access to that. If the teachers are sensitive about people auditing their classroom by just being on the Wi-Fi network, you can say, okay, well, we're going to give out the QR code only to the students who need it, or that in our case, you can password protect those channels. And I'm not sure if that's a common feature or not. What I do know is for us, if that's available, and that's just done right through the app, if you give someone admin access. So now you can use it as a secure solution if that's what you're trying to do. But we have those conversations on the daily. If you have deep dive, networking questions that are specific to your campus, I am more than happy to facilitate those conversations. We've got a team who does that. Like every networking team has a special unicorn of a network that cannot be infiltrated, but most of them it's the same question over and over. We have that. We have networking guides. We have support for you to be able to have this conversation. And we have plenty of campuses around the nation using this right now. So I know It's something that's not insurmountable.
It actually kind of reminds me of the way that we see like wireless display tools managed sometimes, where you have to plug in the IP address to connect. If it's, I have not read quickly enough to see if this is the case, but it also makes me wonder if it could be semi-secure by having a outside system like rotate what those passwords are and have it displayed somewhere in the room so that when it comes time to connect, hopefully you have to be in the room in order to see that password and connect.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate. What I will say about Wi-Fi in particular is it is a platform. It's a very exciting platform for a lot of environments. And within the next year, you will see a lot of these features that would make it a much easier experience and a much easier sell for you guys for a broad campus solution. We're talking in the next 6 months, probably. Things like, wouldn't it be nice to just walk into a room and have a beacon trigger that channel? Or wouldn't it be nice to have, to be able to compartmentalize your channels? Okay, in this building, these are the only channels that are available. Things like that, stay tuned for. Joe will know when they're released, and I'm sure he'd be happy to tell you about it. I'm really trying not to, being very, very sensitive to the no sales environment, but know that there's a lot coming that if there's a need that we are not meeting today, it's likely we will meet it tomorrow.
I have a basic question for you. Can a person use your app and turn the phone's screen off and have everything still working for them?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
What about the term, reasonable accommodation as far as having things installed and setting up and just on request for just say classrooms for right now?
Yeah. So the reasonable accommodation verbiage is from employment law, right? Not ADA. You know, ADA sets forth what they believe is reasonable, and it's more of a requirement. Employment law is more like they understand everybody's an individual and is going to need a different accommodation. And that does not exclude the hard of hearing. That is very true. There are some students that will say, here's my preferred method. I would like to have a personal amplifier that I take with me to class, leave a microphone up on the podium, and that would directly connect, but only to my unit, right? And so my answer to that would fall under the something is better than nothing. Having something that one individual student can use is going to make that one individual student happy, and they are not going to, you know, call in the Department of Justice on you. And it's the right thing to do. What it doesn't do is absolve you of what the ADA law says as a broad. That's still a one-to-one solution, not a one-to-many solution. Now, if the Office of Accommodation says, oh yeah, we have a portable IR kit. What classes are you in this semester? Great, we'll just put one in every one of those classrooms. And then when you walk in that room, it will be available to you. Does that meet the letter of the law exactly? No. Is it going to check most of the boxes and make people very, very happy and give them a good solution? Absolutely. For sure. I hope that wasn't too muddy.
Yeah,
but
no, that's right. Because it's just, you know, I'm going between, you know, if you got to install one in every room, or can you have?
You are supposed to, well,
Yes,
it
but
really depends on the environment. Like IR, the combo system I showed you, most of those are just is installed in every classroom. Then they keep the fleet of receivers at one main office, wherever they decide that is, probably accessibility office. The student has their receiver. They just know whatever room they're in, it's going to work. They start somewhere. Usually they start at the large areas, arenas, stadiums. Then they just start working their way through campus. You know, maybe it's the School of Nursing, maybe it's the School of Law, and they just start outfitting, you know, as the grants become available. Ideally, that's the beauty of IR. It's really, really easy, and it's one little component, and it can be in every rack, and that's great. If you're not going to do that, then it's just as easy to set up as a portable kit and on a little tripod, and you take your audio and plug it in and you're good to go. If there's no in-room audio and you're never going to use a projector or a TV, which never happens, but you know, maybe it's a huddle space or a meeting space, and you have a student who's struggling, well, great. You have other solutions, you know, that help them with those one-on-one conversations in those smaller rooms. And that's something they could check out, or maybe they, you know, purchase for themselves. That's kind of a different listening scenario versus a teacher trying to get audio out to an entire classroom.
Mikey, I want to thank you for a fantastic hour. This has just been one of the most informative sessions I've attended.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for being here. And everyone, yeah, thank you. Really.
Thank you. That was very nice. Yes.
Please watch MCUAV.org for the recording of this session.
MCUAV.org.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks.
Well, you
again.
guys have been great. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing, I mean, these questions were excellent and show me that you really, really are trying to create inclusive environments, and I appreciate that very much.
And thank you, Joe, for setting this up. So this was very much appreciated. We really enjoyed your presentation.
Of course. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye all.